So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We're now on to episode 49 of the series, and this is the final episode of the War of the Greats. This war will be ending today, and with this conclusion, thus ends the longest war and also most advanced war in AdizzPro channel history. This thing's going to be good. I hope you guys are ready for this conclusion, and if you guys do end up enjoying this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All that support is greatly appreciated as we're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers. I'm officially back in college now, so this is a pre-recorded video, and all the videos leading up to March 8th from here to there will all be pre-recorded. Anyway, let's go ahead and get straight into this war. So last time we saw a few major events take place, such as the joining of Finland into the war against Russia, the purple team into the war against Russia. We saw the capitulation of the Iberian country by a multitude of factors, including the West African and Dark Cyan team, as well as the French and Dark Purple team's revenge arc. We saw a lot of logistical failures on the part of the old empire, making them lose a lot of land to a lot of countries. We saw Korea and Vietnam join the war against the Circle Alliance in a coalition of their own, aimed at getting revenge against these two countries. And we also saw the capitulation of Texas over in the Americas and the involvement of the terrorist organization in this war. Today, like I said, it will all be ending, and we will enter into a new era of Wixo history. Oh, also, Norway invaded Greenland. But I hope you guys are ready, and let's go ahead and get straight into this. So picking up where we left off, we saw Russia start an invasion into the purple country after going through the dark blue one. This invasion goes so well that they almost reach the coast of the purple country. All the logistical failures on the front of Russia, which has not happened at all during this war, and this is the first logistical issue that they've ever had, lead to the purple team cutting deep into dark blue team territory and hurting the supply lines of Russia, and thus allowing for a slight pushback from the purple team. They take back a major city in the south, and with the old empire's advances into the white country, it does look like they're about to capture the capital of this previous country, although another stalemate takes place, delaying that event. We also see Russia push back the purple team in the white team's territory all the way back to this strip of land. Over in Norway, we see the Norwegian army make a landing in the Danish peninsula, allowing for them to take the north of the peninsula and then move south, taking this major city and almost completely kicking the Russians out of Denmark. As for the Norwegian navy, they're able to push back the Russians over here in the west and all around the Danish peninsula, allowing for them to recapture the waters around both this small island and this large island, and subsequently in the following days they take back both islands, which is a huge military victory for Norway, who had fortified this island previously, and this is also one of the best military bases in the world on this island. They needed it back, and they got it back, and this will be huge for the rest of the war. Now, up in Finland, things aren't going as well as they were before, as Russia now starts to push back against the Finnish. Their campaign against them goes extremely well, and they even enter into Finnish territory. Over here with Vietnam and Korea, some different things are happening. First of all, China is able to push Korea all the way back out of their own territory and start a massive offensive of their own, taking a few major Korean cities in the upcoming days of the war. Down south though, as we know, it is a completely different story, as the Vietnamese country is absolutely steamrolling the southern Chinese country. They take their capital city in the surrounding area, and this will almost completely capitulate this country. As it turns out, this country was actually almost completely defended by China. They have a very small military. It's kind of comparable to the National Guard of a few countries. That's how small it is. Now, they did have a navy and they had an air force, and of course, those two things had their own personnel, but when it comes to their actual conventional army, they did not have a lot of manpower and did not have a lot of troops within that army. And that's mostly why we see Vietnam having so much success here. The southern Chinese are simply unable to defend themselves. And with them pretty much knocked out of the war, aside from a few major cities, Vietnam is now making advances into Chinese territory from the south, taking two major cities. And whilst China knew that their southern ally was weak, they didn't think they would get beat back this early. And that causes them to have to send some troops from this northern front line all the way down to the south to hold off the Vietnamese, which allows Korea some small land gains that are actually huge victories as they take back 4 major cities from Chinese occupation. Elsewhere though, it's not looking too good, as Korea's navy gets completely beat back by the Chinese all the way around the Korean peninsula in the west. This leads to a lot of bombardment by the Chinese Navy on the actual peninsula of Korea, but no amphibious invasion attempt is made simply because it would be too costly at this point. Back over in the Americas, we see the United States country, that's I guess what I'm calling it now. They go ahead and take a large portion of Mexico's occupied land from Texas and move down the coastal areas. Now in terms of power, America is a lot stronger than Mexico. However, Mexico is receiving way more foreign support than America is. China is actively sending troops and all other equipment and military stuff to Mexico to help them in this war, whereas America is pretty much on their own. Outside of Norway, who is shipping them any oil supplies they need, the old empire has been pretty quiet, and that's mostly because they are kind of stuck from getting over there. Remember, any shipment that the old empire makes to one of its allies has to go all the way around Africa and up through here or over through here. The West African country does control the entrance into the Mediterranean Sea. Now the old empire is going to try to do something about that. They move their navy towards the west and meet up with the navy of the Dark Cyan team, and a huge naval battle takes place around the waters of the African Union, who is probably a little bit mad about this. But these two navies engage each other, and the tactics of the West African Navy overwhelm the navy of the old empire, and this is their first major naval defeat in the war, and it pushes them all the way back to Sicily. Now with a little bit of confidence, the Dark Cyan team and the West African country will send even more of their navies east and engage the old Empyrean navy, and they keep winning these battles. Alright, that's not good. The old empire is very aware that that is not a good thing. But now they will just go ahead and hold a defensive front over here and focus back in on Russia. But first, let's try to take back some of our own territory. The old empire makes an amphibious landing in the southern tip of Crimea, and through a very bloody battle, they make their way up the peninsula and through around the Sea of Azov. From here, land gains are started over here in the east and take back a major city right where Mariupol sort of is, and from here they're able to connect their front lines. This is huge. Then the old empire goes on the offensive in Russian territory, taking these two major cities, and now focusing a brunt of their forces in this area. Old Imperial troops move north, reclaiming old territory and taking another major Russian city, before starting a sweep throughout this part of the country, taking back one of their own cities and moving up and taking yet another city. And now the spearhead is starting to form as the old empire gathers some of its best militaries to move north towards the capital of Russia. But one major issue exists, a disagreement between the leader and another major military general. The general warns the leader that Russia will form a counteroffensive and spearhead right through this, which would be an absolute dagger of a punch towards the old empire, because it would cut off so many supply lines. And what that general also doesn't know is that Russia is mounting a counteroffensive over here as well in order to completely encircle these troops right here. So the general warns the leader of a possible Russian counteroffensive right here, but the leader does not care. The leader wants to end this war as soon as possible and get his revenge on Russia, and ultimately China, but first Russia. So the leader fires that general, sends him home, and decides to go with his plan of just spearheading right towards the Russian capital. Troops begin to mount and go north, and so far the spearhead is successful as they gear right towards the Russian capital. However, exactly what the general warned about is about to happen. The Russians will slam their forces right through here, cutting off a lot of the old empire supply lines. The damage is actually worse than predicted, as they're able to secure the coastal areas of the Sea of Azov as well. And when that counteroffensive forms that no one knew about, it's not good for the old empire, as they get cut off from their spearhead. And now, by the way, the Russians are slamming forces into these two spots right here. They are putting all of their defensive forces to prevent the old empire from linking back up with this grouping. Subsequently, they will lose out on a few other front lines, but this is part of their gamble. The front line over here in the White Country is almost completely lost, as forces that were stationed in the northern eastern area have all fled to this front line to do the invasion, of course. And it also almost allows for the re-establishment of the White Country. However, Purple Team forces are unable to take that capital just as of now. Speaking of Purple Team forces, they will have success in pushing the Russians back out of their country and starting an offensive into the Dark Blue Country, which could eventually be aimed at invading Russian territory near Poland. But back to this. Of the 400,000 troops stuck in this encirclement, they decided to make the decision to retreat back down to this old Empyrean city right on the border of Russia. So most of the forces fall back, but are gunned down from behind, leaving the total force count around 350,000. Eventually, this city will be all that remains for the 350,000, and the most brutal battle of the war begins. And ironically enough, actually, never mind. I was going to say this is kind of close to Kursk, but Kursk is right here. Kursk was the bloodiest battle of World War II. This is more so like Kharkiv, if I had to guess, but that would have been cool if they lined up. But anyway, the most bloodiest battle of the War of the Greats takes place, and the old empire's forces are able to hold off the Russians until all of a sudden the Russian forces retreat out of the area. Cautiously, the old empire's forces here start to take back some of their land, but then a bright flash is seen over the top of the city, and all of the forces are wiped out in a nuclear strike. With the city nuked and the forces wiped out, the Russians can move back into this territory. We can update this, and the old empire's front line over here is collapsing. Very quickly, Crimea's front collapses as the Russians move back in, and the old empire is almost completely pushed back out of Russia. Now, how does the leader of the old empire react to 350,000 of his men being killed in a nuclear blast? Alright, that's understandable. 4 nuclear bombs land in the Russian capital city and its outskirts, killing millions of people. Additionally, we see 2 extra nukes dropped on this front line, killing tens of thousands of Russian troops that were advancing, and leaving the old empire with only 1 nuclear bomb remaining on their soil. Issue: they can't really import any nukes from their allies. These nukes here, they might have been captured. I actually didn't talk about that. I probably should have talked about that. However, as you'll notice, there are still some nukes that are outlying in other territory, such as the White Team. The old empire resecured those and moved them back to their own land, which means in reality, this number looks something like this, with 41 and 33, meaning that the old empire actually has 8 bombs of their own. And now Russia has a choice to make. They have 2 nuclear bombs, but the old empire just nuked their capital city, and yeah, that's not okay. Oh, okay. Wait, that wasn't Russia. The green team comes in and nukes the capital of the old empire, also killing millions of people and setting the leader in a fit of rage. They no longer have any nukes inside of their country. Russia now has even less, and the old empire is, well, they're kind of shaking, and not the good kind of shaking. The citizens of the old empire are getting a little riled up by the thought of their own capital city being nuked. This city is so historical, but now it has been basically destroyed. And this does one of 2 things. First of all, it fills the old empire with a wave full of nationalism. More and more people start to enlist in the old empire's military, although there probably was already a draft in place. But it also creates a little bit of hatred towards the old empire's government. So you get one thing, which is more enlistment, but also a little bit more hatred towards you. How do you balance those things? I don't know. We'll see. But with the nuking of this front line, there are no advances made by either country for a few weeks. Instead, fighting is focused elsewhere, more specifically over here on this front line. And something really bad is going to happen here for Russia. Norway has 10 nukes. Norway sees that their ally, the old empire, just got nuked in their capital city, and Norway is not too happy about that. So what does Norway do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 nuclear strikes on cities in Russia, leaving them with no nukes to defend themselves with. Also got to update this. We're running a little bit low on nukes, guys. But these bombings also destroy a large portion of Russia's nuclear supply that was stationed in case of a Norwegian attack on them. But the Norwegian nuclear strike on these territories does something really bad for Russia, other than, kill a bunch of people. It destroys their last 2 nukes, which were stationed in case of a Norwegian attack, meaning that Russia is left with 19 nukes, and none of them are within their own territory, and they can no longer launch any. That's not good. And also, as it turns out, a large bombing run was done on multiple Russian ports all along the Baltic Sea. This event was crippling for Russia. Not only do they lose access to the Atlantic Ocean earlier on, but now they're losing access to the entire Baltic Sea because the Norwegian Navy has just done one of the greatest naval events in history, wiping out almost all of Russia's navy. And of course, that was in large part thanks to the bombings that they did on the ports and also the nuclear strikes on cities which had factories that manufactured parts for the Russian Navy. All of their naval assets were in this region. That includes all of their shipbuilding components, all those factories. This is really bad for Russia. Now, Russia always believed that Norway wouldn't strike them as long as they didn't strike Norway. They believed that Norway really didn't care for the old empire as much as they really do, and that they wouldn't start a nuclear war with them. They were wrong. They essentially put all of their money on that event not happening, and it just happened. And their navy, like I said, is almost completely destroyed outside of this little area over here. With complete Norwegian domination in the Baltic Sea and little to no defenses by Russia, Norway makes a landing in these 2 Estonian islands. The Finnish navy engages the remainder of the Russian navy and wipes them completely out. And then we finally see an amphibious landing by Norway in the tip of Latvia. Norwegian troops have landed in Russia. Uh-oh. You wanna know what else is uh-oh? All of these nukes They just vanished. Nobody knows where they went. Okay, well, the truth is that the West African country actually stole 6 of them, meaning that they now have 6 nuclear bombs of their own, but they also have 10 Russian nukes on their territory. But nobody knows where the other 6 went. And this concerns the old empire a lot, because who just stole my nukes? We also see that Texas's nukes over here, they get stolen as well. 5 by the Americans, they now have 5 of their own and 11 of the old empires, and 4 by Mexico, giving them 4 of their own and 10 by China. So yeah, it turns out when your allies get invaded, you should probably take all of your nukes out of their territory. Now, all the supply of the Central Asian countries, they've all been exhausted and used or destroyed. It's not too good for them. But this also means that there are now 3 more nuclear powers in the world, along with the old empire, Russia, China, and the Brown team. That's really concerning for the world because they really wanted to prevent the spread of horizontal nuclear proliferation, but ended up failing only because of this war. We'll see how this affects the world after this war, but for now, it's time to finish this thing. Russia is now a little bit worried about them losing this war. New front lines are appearing, one that should never have happened, but it is happening. And they still have their hands full over here in the Balkan area of Europe, where they probably shouldn't have invaded the dark blue country, but nonetheless, they did so anyway. So now they need to do something to turn the tide of the war in their favor. They need a new ally. But first, they kind of have to prove themselves that they're worthy of getting a new ally. So in the destruction that is this front line, they will finally start an advancement into the old empire themselves. Taking advantage of a very discombobulated country, the Russians are effectively able to move their military in and take land from the old empire for the first time since the beginning of the war. They capture 2 major cities with relative ease, and even start an invasion from the Crimean Peninsula, taking yet another major city. Now, the Circle team here, they see an opportunity. Now, of course, they're at war with Russia and the old empire, but who is the one that preemptively nuclear strike them? The old empire. The Russians didn't nuke them. I mean, they did eventually, but not at first. And they also know that a war with Russia would be prolonged and would probably never end. But a war with the old empire is a little bit more winnable. So behind closed doors between the red and the green countries, they will come to a mutual agreement to stop fighting amongst their own front line. And this, of course, is a direct violation of both the Chinese and Russian alliances, but this is once again behind closed doors, kind of similar to what Iberia and West Africa did. The heads of the alliances are relatively unaware of this, mostly because they don't have any troops fighting on this front line in particular. So they lie to their alliance members. They say that they're still holding, like, for example, the red team's still holding this, but in reality, they had given it back to the green team and are now working together to fight back against the old empire, and this combined force is doing damage, mostly because of the logistical failures in this region by the old empire early on in the war. But after the green team takes 3 major cities from them, the world is starting to look at the old empire like, hey, you gotta fight back, dude. You're starting to lose. Have no fear, though. The counteroffensive is here. The old empire recaptures the capital of the white team and starts to sweep through this territory once held by Russia. It all looks to be going better for the old empire. Even the purple team is starting to carry their weight a little bit more on this front line, pushing back the Russians greatly. However, the most concerning thing is that the old empire has been unable to stop the Russian advances in the northern Caucasus. As it turns out, this stems from yet another disagreement amongst the leader and his military officers. Finally, though, he gives in and he listens to his officers, and they make the decision to fortify this area and regroup the armies in order to push back against the Russians in one last attempt to take the Russian capital city, this time having 2 major offenses, one going from this side and one going from this side. The leader compromises, he likes the plan, and he lets his generals run the show, and the old empire is able to stop Russia's advances. However, the old empire loses all gained ground over here in this territory, which allows for the re-establishment of this teal country after their capital city is recaptured by cross-team forces. With this big victory for the cross-team over here, the old empire is essentially on the counteroffensive over here, as the dark green and teal team work to kick them out of this territory, although they are unsuccessful in doing it completely, as the old empire holds a solid footing right here. Also, it turns out for the purple team, they aren't built for this. Now, not in the way that like they're gonna lose or anything, but the Russian army, especially the one that is stationed in the northern German puppet state, is well, they're doing a lot of things that the purple team doesn't like. Like, for example, beating back their armies. A lot. Okay, so purple team now all of a sudden getting cooked. Not good for the square team at all. And the Norwegians are kind of refusing to start a new offensive into northern Germany because they have this foothold over here that they are continuing to work on and expand. Additionally, Finland is also hesitant to invade any further. They're more so looking for like a peace agreement with Russia to exit the war, but Russia isn't coming to the table just yet. Now let's go ahead and talk about this front line over here. It's kind of much of the same. While the Chinese are sending armies back down south to help out their southern ally, it's kind of not enough. Vietnam came into this war very prepared, and like I said, they have the mindset of the green team. They just want to take back their own land, and they have a ton of hatred towards the Chinese. Up north, Korea is trying. They do get all the land back over here, but against the number 2 power in the world, they're just kind of not in a good spot. Now, Korea itself is a strong country, top 15, maybe even top 10. In fact, I would say top 10. And even though China is fighting a 2-front war, it still kind of isn't enough. So they're thinking about a ceasefire or maybe a white peace with China in order to kind of save themselves. But the Vietnamese country is having none of that. And after the full capitulation of the southern Chinese country over towards the Vietnamese country, they have revenge on their mind and want to continue to move forth. They invade a few more cities in southern China, and in an astonishing naval victory, they encircle the waters around Taiwan, a key military institute for China, as they have a lot of naval bases and army bases stationed here. Losing Taiwan would basically lose their connection to the Philippines as well, and you don't want to do that because you also have a lot of military stuff down here. China's kind of put in like a chokehold by Vietnam in this case, and Korea is even able to do a major counteroffensive up north, encircling some Chinese troops in the tip of this area over here. While they're evacuating, they are bombarded by artillery, and the Chinese end up losing a ton of troops. But now with all their territory back, and really what should not have been possible but was able to be possible thanks to Vietnam, Koreans are once again on the offensive against China. They take a major Chinese city right here, and now the people of China are calling for China's exit of World War III. We remember when I first started the war, the support for war in China was 20-80 at the start of the war, and then after the nukings it was more 40-60. Well, that is now back down to 20-80, and in fact, it's actually beyond that. It's now at 1090. Only 10% of China's population, which is one of the biggest population bodies in the world, is in support of World War III. And when your population doesn't support war, you often get thrown out of office. And that's exactly what happens in China. China's leaders are thrown out of office via citizen arrest. Kind of like January 6th, where you had a bunch of dumb people go into the Capitol building. This time, it's actually successful. And they get in there, and they're like, yo, you're done. China throws out its government. The citizens take over. And with that, China will be forced to exit the war, leaving all of these claims to their invaders of Korea and Vietnam. This is an insane event. This is a groundbreaking, war-changing, tide-changing, whatever you want to call it. This is the largest event of the war so far. With China's exit out of the war, they're leaving their 2 allies in the gold team and the red team on their own. Oh yeah, also the orange team. They're there. I keep forgetting about them. But these guys are now on their own. And in a way, they essentially kick China out of the Circle Team alliance, and they will now fight this war on their own. Additionally, we also see Korea and Vietnam stop fighting because they have essentially gotten what they wanted, victory against China. But before the official ceasefire is signed, Korea will take a little bit more land and a few more cities just because, you know, they joined the war to do exactly that, and they're not going to leave the war without doing exactly that. So after upping their war score, if you will, they finally signed the ceasefire, and the war in the East Asian theater is over. China has left the war, and now the Cold War is fought on between the old empire and Russia, as well as Central Asia. Now let's talk about them. What are they going to do? Well, quite frankly, they have no will to fight anymore. They were only fighting because of China. The red team has a little bit more motivation because they were directly nuked, which is what brought China into the war, by the way. So they kind of want to keep fighting. But as for the gold team, they're good. They're going to sign a ceasefire with Russia. They promise to relinquish all lands that they conquest in exchange for peace. Russia agrees to that, and they sign a ceasefire, and this effectively also kicks the gold team out of the Circle Alliance and just leaves these 2 fighting, and they will continue to fight. Now, as for China's lands, they signed a ceasefire with both Russia and the old empire, meaning that they will have to relinquish this land. And they're now dealing with their own internal issues and government, and will sort out a peace deal with Vietnam and Korea following the peace deal of the War of the Greats. So let's actually end this war now. With one less front to worry about for Russia, things are gonna go a lot better for them. More specifically, Central Asia is now completely focused on fighting the old empire. Remember, there is a peace agreement, or not a peace agreement, but kind of like a behind the doors kind of agreement between the green team and the red team to not attack each other in order to attack the old empire. Yeah, that's working really well for them. They're now pushing into major city territories. These, of course, are major cities, but these cities right here, these are your important cities. You don't want to lose those. But yeah, the green team they're putting BTA. The red team also is kind of doing that as well. They're sweeping through old Empyrean territory over here in the east. All right, this isn't good. But Russia has one final trick up their sleeve. They're gonna make a call to an unlikely ally, one that the world hates, one that the world wants gone, but one that could help Russia win this war. Libya. Do you want to do the funny? And not just Libya. Remember, Libya is in an alliance. They're in an alliance with the gold team. Russia calls up the gold team and the red team, and they're like, yo, the old empire, we're kind of kicking their butt right now. You can see our advances. You can see that our alliance is kind of starting to gain momentum in this war. We turn the tide in our favor. China's gone. We can do this thing. The gold team and the red team will accept. And thus, they enter in to the cross team officially, and a new front line opens for the old empire on their southern borders. Remember how the gold team has a really strong leader who is very military orientated? Yeah, he means business. He takes all of Somaliland in a week. This dude's good at his job. He quickly starts moving up the territory of the old empire, and while he does not have an adequate enough navy to fight the old Imperial navy, he has the armies to do it. His strategies, his logistics are unfathomably good. And additionally, the Libyan country gets an early start on the old empire. They were not ready for Libya to join the war, and they start making progress in their old lands towards some major cities. And but now the old empire will go over to the Mediterranean country, and they'll be like, yo, remember all those times that we kind of saved you and bailed you out? It's time for you to help us. But the Mediterranean country will go ahead and continue to declare their neutrality, refusing to join the war to help the old empire. And it's like, bro, really? Whatever though, we are the strongest, we will win. They'll start a counteroffensive as planned back against Russia, and as predictably, the general's plan was right. It works. It's better. Cool. What's not so cool though is them losing their foothold over here in Central Asia, and that sucks for them because now they are technically on the defensive everywhere. They're defending down south, defending over here, defending in the Balkans, defending right here technically, and defending over here most importantly. But back down here, this is important. The gold team is committing the absolute worst atrocities ever seen in a war throughout these 4 major old empire cities. And there's videos released of them to the world, and the old empire citizens see this and they are like, whoa, that's too much. At this point, 95% of old Imperial citizens are calling for the end of the War of the Greats, but their leader wants to continue to fight on. In Russia, much of the same is happening because, well, most of their cities have been nuked at this point. In fact, Russia's infrastructure is almost entirely destroyed because of all these nuclear bombs. But the fighting will still continue on. The old empire's military makes some pretty good strides against Libya, now pushing up and taking their former capital city, which was this right here. They'll also wrap around and take this major city. And it looks like the old empire is sort of kind of bouncing back, but a major advancement has just been made. This is all of a sudden. But this is a pivotal point in the war because Russian scientists, or I guess engineers and mechanics, have just created the nuclear submarine, meaning that they can now launch nuclear bombs out of submarines. Russia is the only country with this technology. The old empire has been in the total war effort. They have abandoned any kind of major military research, such as like nuclear submarines, for example. But Russia, they've been continuing on with their research, and they developed this, and they send some nuclear subs down to West Africa, where there are 16 Russian bombs, where there are 10 Russian bombs, and of course 6 of West Africa's own. Now, of course, Russia itself, they don't have any nukes. They're all in Allied territory. So they give them to West Africa. West Africa will load the 3 nuclear submarines that they just received with, of course, 3 nuclear warheads, and send them out somewhere in the Mediterranean. Now, the old empire is aware of this, you know, sonar exists, but this terrifies them because they can now strike at any single point at any single major city. This also massively fuels the civilian population with fear, because at any point their city could just be, you know, vaporized. Now Norway over here, they're just kind of chilling. They're going to expand their little offensive around the whatever you want to call this right here, ocean sea thing. They're chilling, you know, they're chilling, but the old empire is freaking out. And with continued losses to the green team over here, I don't know what to say, but old empire needs to lock in. Major sweeps happen throughout the puppet state of the old empire, and offensives by the orange team capture a lot of land. Major uprisings are happening in the old empire now. More specifically in Africa, where these lands had previously sort of been annexed recently. There was some selling of land that happened, but nonetheless, the people in Africa are kind of sick of being ruled by the old empire. And this massive uprising presents itself. Guerrilla warfare fighting happens within all major cities over here, and the old empire loses its footing in Africa. What does that look like? Well, it looks something like this, with the rebellious country taking a majority of the land, but the red team and the gold team also taking a lot of land. With this, front lines across the old empire begin to collapse as the Russians start to pour in. Quickly, major cities begin to be captured by the Russians, and very soon they reach the Caucasus Mountains, where they are held off by old Imperial forces. Now, the old empire has some intense and insane geography. The Caucasian Mountains to the north, the Suez Canal over towards the west. Now, of course, there isn't a Suez Canal, but they probably dug one, just not called the Suez Canal. The whole ocean to their south, the Iranian Mountains to their west, and the strait right here between Istanbul and Europe to their east. Geographically, impossible to invade, right? Sure, from the outside, but from within, it's a lot more possible. Now though, the old empire is basically sending a cry for their troops to come home and defend their home territory to the last breath. The troops exit out of the white team, they stop holding any grounds there, and they leave the purple team to fend for themselves. This, well, you can kind of expect how this goes for them. They also get pushed back pretty well, to the point where they have no advances on the purple team's territory. Now with the Russians' major victories in the south, the Norwegians are going to continue to kind of just sneak around Russia, take some cities and stuff. Yeah, the Finnish, they also kind of do this. They kick the Russians out of their territory at least. And they also take some major cities up here, which is really confusing to the world because Russia is doing a lot of damage in the south towards the old empire all of a sudden, but they are losing a ton of ground up north. And as it turns out, the Russian state is collapsing. Not only is the Russian state collapsing, but the old empire is collapsing. There are too many fronts for both of these countries, and hence they are both starting to lose their grasp. The citizens of both countries are sick of the war, and while Russia is beating down the old empire, the final split will take place. A major rebellion will show its face in Greece, and this has the purple team stressing because like, oh my god, why did we even join this war? But this major rebellion is just one of many that will continue to break out as another rebellion breaks out in the Bulgarian region. And Russia is quick to make peace with these rebellious areas. They do not want to fight them because that would not be fun. They'll just kind of let them work their own magic. And the old empire's leader is going to be assassinated by his own citizens and taken out. There's been a lot of assassinations here recently. But with the death of their leader, the government of the old empire will officially collapse. The purple team will be very quick to sweep the Italian peninsula and take all of the old empire's claims in this area. They'll also be quick to take advantage of the confusion and invade into a few Russian areas in order to maybe force Russia into some kind of peace agreement. But the purple team is very smart about the final stages in this war. With the risk of rebellion mounting each and every day, the military of the old empire loses all of its morale. Eventually, a successful liberation campaign led by the orange team over here in the old empire's puppet state leads to its rebellion, and now another rebellious state exists against the old empire. The Libyan country will also seize their puppet state in Central Africa, and the old empire's navy will be forced to retreat to the motherland in order to protect their true core territory. They also back out of the Black and Caspian Seas, which will give Russia a chance to do something that they haven't been able to do this entire war: launch their boats against the old empire. Now, there aren't many. In fact, most of their naval stuff was destroyed when Norway attacked them, but they were able to save some boats, mostly because they weren't actually being built over here. They were being built somewhere in central-ish Russia as kind of like a backup just in case this happened, and it happened. But now they're launching them, and the Russian Navy does a lot of damage to the mainland old empire. There's a lot of artillery fire straight into the continental old empire, and now we see the complete collapse of the Iranian front for the old empire. And essentially what is a rebellion, kind of fueled by the green team, but also fueled by the newer dark blue team. They lose all of the land that is eastward of the Iranian mountains. Rebellious populations start to pop up in southern Turkey, and this rebellion eventually gains enough ground to start doing damage against the old empire's military, causing a complete collapse of the old empire's navy in this area, leaving Crete completely undefended, leading to a very brutal invasion by the Libyans of this peninsula, but it does end in a Libyan victory. And after the gold team troops are able to somehow skip rock and make landing in the south of the old empire, well, without a government and with the civilians kind of starting to do their own thing, I think it's pretty obvious what happens here. The old empire will collapse. Without a government to lead them and without military commanders that are competent enough to step up and take the position, the old empire's navy will completely vanish. Well, they're not going to vanish. They're just going to go back to port and kind of sit around and do nothing probably. But the old empire's navy is now useless. But right before the citizens agreed to terms of surrender with Russia and the cross team, one military general makes one final call, which is to exhaust the old empire of all of its nuclear supply and unload the remaining 8 bombs straight into Russia. They'll hit parts of the capital metropolitan area, which they missed initially, but will also hit some of these outskirt countries, and for good measure, they will drop one on the capital of the gold team. That does it for all of the old empire's nukes, and with Russia all out, the West African country will take initiative, firing all 10 of Russia's nukes straight into old empire territory via their nuclear submarines. Now, they will of course have to do this in rounds of 3 because they only have 3 nuclear subs, but these nukes effectively hit their targets, each wave killing hundreds of thousands and doing exactly what the citizens feared the most, killing more and more people. Remember, once again, these are tactical nukes, not super huge explosions, not world-ending explosions. But with the launching of those last few nukes, Russia's nuclear supply is completely gone. Russia and their alliance now have 0. Whereas with the old empire and the square team, there exists still more bombs, 23, which that doesn't add up. America has 11, which means that the old empire should only have 11. But they themselves have 11 nukes. They're not even on the same continent, so what's the point? And with the old empire looking like they're about to disappear, Norway and Finland will jointly submit a ceasefire to Russia to stop the fighting. The purple team, after fighting for a little bit more and taking a little bit more land, specifically in this dark blue country, and the Russian puppet state, will also sign a ceasefire with Russia, and with that, these 3 countries effectively leave the war. It is now the old empire in America. Oh, well, these 2 just signed a ceasefire as well. All right, it is now just the old empire, this African country, versus the cross team and the circle team. The citizen government surrenders. The old empire has collapsed. Their government doesn't work anymore. The citizens signed surrender to Russia and the cross team as well as the circle team. And the War of the Greats is over. Russia has won. But something happens as the Russian military moves into old Imperial territory and starts taking over their claims, of which they will soon sign a peace deal with. 10 more nuclear strikes will hit Russia over here near their capital. Russia's major cities are completely destroyed. Their infrastructure is destroyed and they can no longer respond to this attack. Whoever did it. Now, who did it? Oh, the brown team nuked Russia. And while this war was fought between the superpowers of the world, between Russia, China, and the old empire, the brown team has been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The perfect moment for revenge. After losing World War II, the brown team lost tons of land to Russia. And while they did make amends with the old empire, they could never forgive Russia for what they did. The brown team's military will swiftly move through all of Russia's puppet states, taking back what was rightfully brown team territory. With an almost completely collapsed Russian state, the brown team sees little to no resistance in their advance. They sweep across Russia, and after getting near towards their capital city, Russia will be forced to surrender to the brown team, meaning that these territories down here gained by Russia will have to be forced into relinquishment by one of their allies, or more specifically, all of their allies. And since none of their allies ended up declaring war on the brown team, this is a one-on-one war between the brown team and Russia. So the brown team doesn't have to fight any of Russia's allies. They were smart enough not to declare war on the brown team. They know. No matter how close your allies seem, they will always betray you when it matters most, if you're losing. Anyway, the old empire's relinquishment will look something like this. This is temporary only until they work out an official peace deal to end World War III, but we also have to worry about a peace deal over here between the brown team and Russia. In the meantime though, the purple team will violate the ceasefire between them and Russia, sweeping through the territories of the white team, which they are allied with, by the way, and moving into Russian territory. They'll take a few major cities before meeting over with the claims of the lime green team, and will then force Russia to surrender to itself, despite already surrendering to the brown team, which kind of creates some tension between the brown team and the purple team here. But that's for some later episodes. And what would you know? Norway also violates the ceasefire, pushing deeper into Russian territory, and also taking a good chunk of land from them. Does anyone else want to violate Russia before they're gone? Alright, no. Russia, like I said, is going to finally surrender to all parties, but overall, the cross team is the victor of World War III. But it is kind of confusing, isn't it? The old empire lost, the Iberian country lost, but Norway and the purple team won, and the white team also technically won, but they're just colored in the wrong color right now. And America sort of won, but the old empire lost. China kind of just left. They're technically on the losing side. Russia won at first, and then all of a sudden the brown team came in and they lost. So it's kind of like confusing. Anyway, that will do it for this episode of What If Civilization Starts Over. In the next episode, we will be taking a look at a brand new world map. One that will enter us into a new era. The era of aggression. Goodbye to the War of the Greats. Goodbye to the World War III era. And once again, welcome to the era of aggression. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All the support is greatly appreciated as we're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers. Leave any comments with your input on this video. Let me know what you think. And next video we'll have a better understanding of how exactly this war played out and who really won and lost. But as for now, that's all for me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes America and Canada and UK, Freezioid, GodzillaBro, Zaylance, Unknown TD, Georgie Badev, Servanator, Johnny XX7, King Cheese, GD Cilia, Pablo Sigma Cat, Death Strider X, Hammer Toad 45, Connor the Gamer, Nevada Garbage Trucks, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.